Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our program, The What, Why, and How of Blockchain Technology in Advancing Environmental and Social Justice, brought to you by the American Bar Association section of Civil Rights and Social Justice and the Environmental Justice Committee as part of our rapid response webinars. During the 2018-2019 bar year, our goal is to rapidly respond to government and industry action and inaction that may impact civil rights and civil liberties and environmental justice by offering free webinars, commentary, podcasts, social media posts, and other information from subject matter experts like we have here today. We encourage you to check out our section's website at www.americanbar.org/CRSJ, and our Facebook page and Twitter handle are at ABA_CRSJ for more information, and you can access the replays and see what other great programming we have coming up. And if you'd like to work with us or be a part of this section or our committee, we invite you to join, and you will have an opportunity to participate in and develop programs that are of interest to you for our members and the general public. And I am Stephanie Traeger. I'm co-chair of CRSJ Environmental Justice Committee, and I'm also an attorney and chief catalyst at Intentional Paradigms, an executive coaching and strategic consulting firm specializing in business leadership, human rights, and sustainability. And I met our speaker, Shafiq El-Kurdi, during the UN General Assembly Week in New York at a Climate Week event on blockchain and the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we thought that collaborating on this event here would be really interesting to sort of to jog our creative thought about other ways, new ways we can look at using blockchain technology in advancing social and environmental justice. So before I introduce our speaker, Shafiq, I just want to let you all know that during today's programming, you can ask questions at any time on the right or wherever it is on your screen in the questions box. And we're going to have a section afterwards, 30 minutes to answer your questions. And Shafiq also was kind enough to provide a PDF of his slides, which should be accessible on the right on that bar panel as well. So you can download that. And yeah, please feel free to reach out with any questions also by email if you have any feedback or follow-up questions to this programming. So today's program, as we dive into the what, why, and how of blockchain technology in advancing environmental and social justice, is really about the intention to spark more creativity, new ways that we can use this technology to solve our biggest problems. And what's wonderful is that Shafiq has this incredible experience and is going to help us understand the technology behind blockchain and also understand the value and mechanisms of smart contracts. Also understand the blockchain's application across disaster relief, sustainable development, and environmental justice. And again, stimulate creative thinking for potential applications. And so if you have any questions or ideas, thoughts, or comments, don't hesitate to share them in the box on the right. And now I'd love to introduce Shafiq El-Kurdi, who is here with us today. He's the head of blockchain development at Eden GeoPower. And he holds a Bachelor's of Science in Economics and Management from Paris West Nanterre University, as well as two master's degrees from Holt International Business School, respectively in International Business and Finance. He's head of blockchain development for Eden GeoPower, a clean tech company that powers cryptocurrency mining out of geothermal energy. Shafiq previously founded the Holt Blockchain Research Center, holding lectures on blockchain-related topics to graduate students, and won the 2018 MIT Bitcoin Hackathon, thanks to his decentralized P2P lending platform. So I'm really excited to pass the mic to you, Shafiq. Thank you for being here, and I'm excited to learn more about blockchain technology.
Thank you very much. More importantly, thank you for making this happen. We really need more and more presentation and webinar like this one, like blockchain, but also the technology in such domain like environmental and social justice. So my name is Shafiq El-Kurdi, and today I'm happy to present on the topic of blockchain technology. What is it? How does it work? Why is it needed? And how can it advance environmental and social justice? So to do so, just 1 second, my apology. Yes, so it will be quite hard for you guys to relate to blockchain's application in environmental and social justice if you're not familiar with the concept of blockchain itself. Reason why: the content of this webinar starts with an introduction to blockchain and distributed ledger technology, followed by analyzing the future of money with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, to then discuss the future of contracts with Ethereum and introducing those amazing things that are the smart contract. By then, you should have all the necessary tools to easily relate to the technology's application in the domain of environmental and social justice. So let's start. To really understand the value of blockchain, there are two key concepts that need to first be clarified. The concept of distributed ledger, which you will see has nothing new. Yes, and the concept of hashing function, which is way simpler than it sounds. Starting with a definition, I assume that most of you are familiar with the notion of a ledger, a record-keeping mechanism for transaction. It's more interesting to look at the definition of distributed. The first interpretation here is mathematical. They define distributed as something distributed is characterized by a statistical distribution of a particular kind. How helpful is this? Not really. The second one is more relevant to our discussion. In the domain of computing, it means having at least some of the processing done by the individual workstation. You will see that those workstations can take many forms. We'll come back to it soon. And having informations shared by and often stored at the workstation. Spoiler alert, everyone, the information here is actually the ledger, the information in the ledger. Alternatively, you can think as a distributed network the following way. It makes it possible to take massive tasks, computing tasks, and spread them out over a large number of personal computers, a practice called distributed computing. We're going to come back to this again when we're going to talk about Ethereum and smart contract. Keep this in mind. So, to understand blockchain, let's go back to 500 AD on the island of Yap, located in what is now Micronesia. Its inhabitants, the Yapi people, had stone like this one everywhere in the island. It was their money. Yeah, these stones were like 2 meters tall and weighed around 200 kilograms each, which represent a bit of a problem to transact, right? How did they solve it? By never, ever physically moving those huge coins. Instead, those stones were placed in very visible location throughout the tiny island, and every adult Yapi knew exactly who the owner of each of the coins were, by memory. So, when two Yapis wanted to transact, they would announce the change of ownership. They would agree on the transaction and then announce the change of ownership to the other Yapis. So all those Yapi would then update their knowledge of whom the coin belonged to. Voila, the coin was exchanged. In this case, the workstation is actually the mind of those Yapi, their memory, and the information is a stone ownership. This information is shared and stored in each workstation, in each Yapi's mind. That's a distributed ledger. Although the information is not technically a ledger, it behaves very similarly to a blockchain distributed ledger in the function it performs. Here, a person cannot tamper with the ledger and claim ownership of a stone that doesn't belong to him, unless all Yapis come forward and contradict his claim, based on their knowledge of the ledger, which means no fraudulent transactions are likely to happen in this network. Also, if a particular member of the tribe gets sick, is not available anymore, or moves away, thereby losing a copy of the ledger, the transaction can still be validated by other Yapis. This system is fault tolerant. So, perhaps more interesting is what happens if a coin gets destroyed or lost. For example, in one instance, a large stone fell over the island in the ocean. No problem, the other Yappy decided. They could imagine that coin sitting in the ocean will give you credit for it, and they will normally use it for transaction like they would do with every other stone. Therefore, for all practical purpose, the coin doesn't even really need to exist. They could still use it to transact. Now, the Yappies could have decided to rely on only one person in their community to keep track of the mental ledger of all coins in the island. That person would have to be very trustworthy in both honesty and administration skills. And the monopoly that person would have on transaction activity in the island might lead him to charge fees or make rules about who and when one can transact. On the other hand, a problem would arise if that person fell ill, leaves, or if their integrity was compromised in some way. I don't know if it reminds you of anything. I have an idea in mind. That's literally a bank. So, looking at networks, it's interesting to see the different kind of network we have here. Let's start with centralized network, which is literally what we just saw, the same way we work with banks, for example, as of today. In a centralized network, although it's quite convenient not to have to memorize all those transactions or have to take care of them yourself, it requires you to totally rely on a single point of failure. Meaning, look at here, I don't know if you see my mouse, but if this point is leave or like get hacked, if it's a bank, for example, if this bank get hacked, all of the participants in the network have no more bank accounts. In decentralized system, you don't rely on a central party, but you rely on multiple centralized sub-network, like this one here, 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 and also here. Sorry. So where you can see it yourself, many participants heavily depend on those other party. Meaning, if, for example, these nodes get out of the system for any reason, not only you're losing their data and the transaction, but also all of those participants. A distributed ledger is different, given the fact that each user has a copy of the ledger and participate in confirming transaction independently. Thus, not reliability or trust in other participants is required. However, we can distinguish two types of distributed network, the public ones and the private ones. To verify transaction in a public blockchain, like Bitcoin's, Ethereum's blockchain, a user do not need to authenticate or to ask anybody's permission to start verifying transaction. He just needs to buy a workstation and start running it with electricity. On the other hand, in a private blockchain, participants need to authenticate themselves and have a permission to have a copy of the ledger and confirm the transaction. It might sound weird. I will give you a small example. If tomorrow a bank, I won't cite any name, but a bank decide to develop its own blockchain, they wouldn't let anybody like myself, an average person, verify the transaction of their bank. The only people who will be able to verify this transaction will be people working at the bank and that are paid by them. And they will need to authenticate to make sure that they're working at the bank. So it's literally taking the blockchain technology, the decentralized network, but putting it under a dome, a centralized dome. So you're kind of centralizing a decentralized network. I don't know if it makes sense. Hope it does.
Wait, Shafiq, can I just jump in with a question? We actually had a question come in from the audience about that this might be a good time to answer it. It was, can blockchain be used to record transactions in private? Or would now be a good time, or are you going to explain that?
Actually, I can answer this real quick. Yes, you can. I will talk later about a cryptocurrency that is totally anonymous, that allow you to transact with total anonymity, as Bitcoin, for example, doesn't really give you anonymity. We'll talk about this later, but that's a really good question. But in one sentence, yes, you can totally transact with total anonymity. Yes. Continuing, let's now talk about cryptographic hashing function. I know it sounds not appealing at all. However, it's really useful and really simple. It's simply a mathematical function used in cryptography. By function, I mean a mathematical equation, like the one you can see on the right, where if you put a book or a string of character or any given input, you will obtain on the other end a unique 20-digit code, which will be unique to any given input. How to understand this? I have an example. So I have this input, this sentence, the evolution of money, which when I input it in a cryptographic hashing function, the output is a 20-digit code, as I just explained. However, this is when it starts to become interesting. If I put the exact same input, but with one letter difference, the revolution instead of evolution here, you will have a totally different 20-digit code. Same with a comma difference. Any small difference can directly, change the output. So such code will be, the code will be so different, you will not even able to connect it to each other and to the original version of the sentence. Hashing functions have amazing use cases. You can use them to validate information. For example, imagine you're about to sign a lease and need to make sure to sign the same copy as your landlord. You can simply drop your version of the contract and his version of the contract in the hashing function. And if there's even a comma difference, they would yield a totally different 20-digit codes. That can be helpful.
What do you mean by Shafiq? What do you mean by drop the lease in? So like any contract, right? You drop it in. What do you mean by that?
A contract is literally a string of character too. So it's literally copy pasting all the content of the contract and putting in the hashing function. This is what I meant by a string of character. You can even put a book if you want to. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Literally the transcript of the contract, yes, that you're going to input in the function. Another way to use it is to obscure your identity. It's not that bad. By combining your personal information, for example, your name, you can put a string of characters that have your name, your date of birth, your hair color, for example, in a string of text, and put that into a function to generate a unique 20-digit code. Then use this code as your internet ID, for example, to conduct business online, making sure that no one can connect to back this code to your identity. But if later someone wants to make sure that this is really you, like this code really represents you, you can just show him that you know the only combination of input that can regenerate this code. So you can really show him that this is yourself, like this is really you, while being obscure and not anonym, yes, kind of, to the rest of the internet. So now that we know from the Yappies example that the distributed ledger allows us to transact with coins, even if the underlying coin doesn't exist, like the coin in the bottom of the ocean. We also saw how it was nearly impossible to steal coin, as each Yappie knows who owns a given coin and where any transaction has modified their ownership or not. Also, we understood the value of hashing function. So let's talk about blockchain now. The same way the Yappie people were storing the information in their mind, here the workstation is not a piece of people's brain, but their workstation, their engine. It can be a phone, a laptop. You will see right after that as of now, they're literally machines that only do that, Bitcoin mining and other stuff like that. So What's the difference? Not many. Here too, the transactions are stored in the workstation. And the problem is people are not really, each computer has a copy of the ledger showing the coin ownership, visible and known to everyone. The same way, the only problem here is that people are not really comfortable having their whole identity and their bank account, their transaction history on the internet in a public record. This is where the hashing function enters in place. The last issue here is how do you make sure that all those different nodes have the same copy of the ledger? Once again, thanks to an hashing function. You just need to put this string of character, which is all the transactions, into an hashing function, which will give you an hashing output for your ledger. If everybody in the network have the same hashing output, it means that everybody has the same version of the ledger. That's what we call reaching consensus.
Shafiq, I have a question for you. And this will benefit anyone who is listening in that really doesn't know a lot about blockchain technology to the basics. So I'm listening to you, and I'm still wondering: can anyone with a computer anywhere access this and put in input and hash and all of these things that you're talking about? Can you do this on a phone or on a computer anywhere? And can anyone do it?
So in theory, yes, you can. I will exactly talk about this topic in few slides. But in theory, you can mine with a phone or a laptop. However, because there is so much competition in that network in this industry right now, people start to develop some machines that are specially made to verify those transactions. Meaning that your computer is not really competitive against this machine, which will make it really hard for you to do it. However, you can still do it, but you won't be rewarded that often because you don't have that much computational power in your laptop, while those people have a lot of computational power in this machine. We're going to talk about this machine in a bit, don't worry.
Okay.
So we're done with a blockchain and distributed ledger. You know now what is a blockchain, the technology behind Bitcoin and thousands of other cryptocurrencies. However, I can't really dive into the concept of cryptocurrencies before understanding the notion of money and currencies themselves. Reason why we're starting this chapter with a look at the evolution of money. So let me start this slide by saying that money is not wealth. Money is simply an accounting system used to facilitate wealth. That's all what money is, information. More specifically, money is a means of reliably transmitting information about the value offered but not yet received, or at least not yet received in a form in which it can directly satisfy the desires or needs of a person. To put it in another word, money is a registry. We had decentralized registry before. Actually, our first dominant form of money was decentralized, and that's gold. After all, no one can simply print a new gold, and the gold register is distributed because the physical gold itself is distributed through its supply. But with gold, this decentralization comes at a heavy price, literally. The physical aspect of gold is extremely inefficient for global transaction, even for local transaction. So after World War II, the gold standard was established by the Bretton Woods Agreement. Under this system, many countries fix their exchange rates relatively to the US dollars, and central banks could exchange dollar holdings into gold at the official exchange rate of $35 per ounce. This option was not available to firms or individuals. All currencies were pegged to the dollar, thereby had a fixed value in terms of gold. So the distribution of money here was centralized, however, through its distribution. However, it was still materialized, as every dollar was backed by gold, in theory. I'm saying in theory, because less than 30 years after the Bretton Woods Agreement, seeing the United States exports decreasing, while consequently increasing their military expenditures in Vietnam, other countries like France and Germany started to doubt of the value of those dollars and ask their gold back. The thing is, they were right. There were way much more dollar had been printed than gold stored, which led Richard Nixon, as you all may know, president at the time, to end the gold standard in 1971, I believe. Yes, and this was the start of the fiat system, the debt system. Since then, a system of national fiat money has been used globally, with freely floating exchange rate between the major currencies. First interesting point here is the following. Nothing is backing those dollars anymore, but the full faith and credit of the United States government. Credit that is now higher than, that will soon reach actually, that's now higher than the US GDP, and that will soon reach $22 trillion. Yes, I believe. While the GDP should be around $20 trillion. Therefore, I believe we can conclude that money is already dematerialized. You know, nothing is backing your dollar the same way that nothing's backing your Bitcoin, except, sorry, the dollar are backed by the US government for some time. This was a joke. However, with fiat currency like the dollar, the registry is centralized, and that gives a central authority responsible for maintaining this extraordinary power that this book represents, this registry, a power that history showed us many times, proved us to be inevitably abused. I'm saying that because so far, no fiat currency survives. They all fail. All throughout history, all fiat currency has failed. So, with the introduction of Bitcoin was white paper in October 2008, in the middle of the world's greatest recession, financial crisis, since the Great Depression of the 30s. Here, the registry is decentralized. As we saw it right before, it relies on blockchain technology, where everybody in the network have a copy of the registry. And this means that no individual or entity has the power to arbitrarily create new units, causing inflation, for example, or freeze or confiscate your account, or even block a particular payment. And that's why I believe Bitcoin is important. It's the first coin in the world that is both decentralized and dematerialized, digital. It is more reliable than the modern digital bank, and more efficient from a private and transactional point of view than gold. That's a big claim, I know. However, that's mine. Now that you're more familiar with money and its evolution, what is cryptocurrency? It's simply the next evolution of money. Indeed, it's a simple medium of exchange that uses cryptography to secure the exchange of digital information and control the creation of new units, the supply. So, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is simply the first decentralized digital currency. It is peer-to-peer. You can send it over the internet, and the transactions are confirmed by incentivized individuals. This competitive market make transaction really cheap. Really cheap to make. Because it's all on the internet. It has a global exposure. Someone in Senegal can send money to someone in China or in America within few minutes for literally no fee. This also means that nobody has authority and control over your Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want with them, and nobody can give you condition on how, where, and when you can use your money. That is Bitcoin. But where are those Bitcoin? Where can I get some? Quite simple. You can buy them. You can buy Bitcoin in cryptocurrency exchanges, which are simple websites that will exchange your fiat currency against cryptocurrency, or in a cryptocurrency ATM that do the same function, but with the ability to use cash. There is also some peer-to-peer exchanges where you will meet someone and just make a transaction conventional way. Once you bought some, the real question becomes where to store your Bitcoin. You can store them online in an online wallet, aka hot digital wallet, which I would really not recommend. Those wallets, those third-party phone application or website are usually the exchange themselves, and these are susceptible to being hacked like every other website. And if someone hacks, the only difference, if someone hacked a crypto exchange website, they don't have access to like Equifax, to social security number or credit card number. No, they have access to your Bitcoin, literally. Yeah, all your Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. A solution to this issue is to store your keys. I will just put a small parenthesis here. When I say where to store your Bitcoin, you're not really storing your Bitcoins themselves. It came back to the hashing function. Your wallet, a Bitcoin wallet, is actually composed of your public key and your private key. The public key is the hashing output that is in the public registry and that anybody can use to send you money or to see like how much money, how much Bitcoin are under this account. Think about it as your account numbers, that is, everybody can see it. However, the private key, which is another string of 20-digit character, is the input that would have gave you this public key. And this is really important. This is what needs to be stored securely, because while the public key allow people to send you money, give people an address to send money to, the private key is the one that allow you to send money to people from your account. So this is really where your Bitcoin are. So you can store this string of character in a USB drive, in an offline wallet, a wallet that is not connected to the internet in 24/7. This can be a USB drive, storage media. You can even note it on a piece of paper and hold it, like hide it somewhere, or use a third-party hardware wallet. Those are companies that are specialized. Think about those as USB key, but in addition, you don't only have to connect it. There's also codes. They're really secure to store. This is a more secure way to store your cryptocurrencies using dedicated third-party hardware wallets. So when it becomes interesting is that here you're the only one to have access to this key. So there is no customer service. If someone go to your house and steal this hardware wallet or this piece of paper, whatever the thing where you store this key, you lost your Bitcoin. There is nobody to call to ask for reimbursement, or no, except maybe the police might be helpful. However, it's really your own responsibility. So where do they initially come from, those Bitcoin? We saw how can I buy some, but how are they supplied? This is where we talk about Bitcoin mining. I will provide a simplified explanation for now. And if you want more insight about Bitcoin mining, I would be happy to refer back to it during the Q&A. I like to compare Bitcoin mining to Uber. Indeed, advancing into this sharing economy, you can call Bitcoin, sorry, the Uber of money. In Uber, individuals complete rides to get rewarded. Drivers complete rides to get rewarded. In the Bitcoin network, miners, individuals, verify transaction to get rewarded. So while Uber driver confirm rides to get rewarded, Bitcoin miners are verifying transaction. In Uber, the driver need a car to complete the ride. Similarly, in the Bitcoin network, individuals need a workstation to run the mining software and verify transaction. The mining software, nothing complicated. It's just an algorithm that solves cryptocurrency. It gives you math problem, and you need to give them the solution of the math problem. In Uber, upon ride completion, the driver is paid in dollar. In Bitcoin network, upon transaction confirmation, the miner is paid in Bitcoin. Only difference is they receive newly generated Bitcoin in addition to the one paid as a transaction fee. But this is where it gets really interesting. In Uber, a driver car needs fuel to perform the rides, same as a miner's workstation need electricity to perform the verification. However, if tomorrow the price of oil goes to the roof without an increase in Uber fares, it will stop to be profitable for drivers to perform rides. Therefore, there wouldn't be no more drivers because they're not incentivized anymore to perform those rides. No more Uber. It is exactly the same with the Bitcoin network. If tomorrow the price of electricity goes to the roof without an increase in Bitcoin price, it will stop to be profitable for miners to perform verification. There wouldn't be no more miners as there is no more incentivization, and hence no more Bitcoin. However, the small difference here is that electricity prices are not global like oil prices. So as long as someone will be able to generate electricity for cheap, to access electricity for cheap or no cost, they will be incentivized to mine Bitcoin. It remains a smart way to issue a currency, create incentive for more people to mine and secure the network. Why secure the network? Since miners are required to approve Bitcoin transaction, more secure network. More miners, sorry, will lead to a more secure network. Question, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm curious about the mining. If it's completely decentralized and you can transact on your own, there is this third party that you're saying you do need. You need these miners. That's question number one. And then I'd also love you to speak to, I know a lot of people speak about the environmental impact of more energy, more electricity, more mining, right? We're solving problems, but is it creating a problem to generate or need more electricity and energy?
Sure. Do you mind just repeating the first part of the question?
The first question was, if it's decentralized and people can transact on their own, of course, on a transparent blockchain, then why would you need what are the miners for? It sounds like there is a third party that's needed.
Sure. So the miners are actually where the decentralization happened. So I'll think about it. If you would do it forget about Bitcoin, with your bank account. I want to send you from my Bank of America account to yours some money. I will effectuate the transaction, and the transaction will be confirmed by Bank of America, a third party, a centralized third party. In the Bitcoin network, instead of relying in this alone third party, you have this network of miners, and this come back to the Yapi example. This network of miners that even if few of them leave tomorrow or like try to put wrong transaction in this network, the majority of other miners will see that this one is trying to cheat, and this person's information won't be accepted, kind of. So the thing here is to bring competition in this third-party markets, because it's basic economy. Competition bring down prices for consumers. So instead of giving those monopoles to, for example, banks insurance company, and etc., etc., you relying on a network of people like you and me that are verifying those transactions instead of relying on a bank. Bank. Does it answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, got it.
Second one was about electricity intensity. That's a really valid point. Bitcoin mining is quite intensive in terms of electricity. However, when people usually point this out, they miss two things actually. First is that you need to compare apples with apples. Bitcoin is sometimes compared to kind of what banks does, like transaction settlement, third party. We'll call it a third party. Following that, you need to look at the electricity consumption of Bitcoin compared to the electricity consumption of those banks. Trust me, those banks are running data centers that are way much more electricity intensive than Bitcoin mining. Another comparison that people like to do is to compare Bitcoin to gold. Trust me, once again, you don't want to compare Bitcoin mining to gold mining. Gold mining is way much more electricity intensive and pollutant itself, like in terms of footprint.
Mercury.
Yes, exactly. Than Bitcoin. The second point that people miss to mention when they talk about Bitcoin electricity consumption is that people in the blockchain industry are working in solution to fix this issue. We're going to talk about proof of stake, for example, that doesn't require electricity the same way that Bitcoin does. And so, yeah, you have this industry that are aware of this issue and that are working in bringing solution to this issue. On the other hand, you have company like mine that this is what really happened when you build a competitive market. So a company like mine that enjoy power, that are looking for renewable energy sources to power this Bitcoin mining operation. So even though it's electricity intensive, it will be coming from renewable environment that are not polluting the environment.
Cool. Thank you.
Hope this was helpful. So looking at Bitcoin mining evolution, and this brings me back to your question about can we mine with with your smartphone, for example. As I told you really early at the beginning of Bitcoin, you could. Everybody was actually mining with their own laptop. You just had to download the mining software and run it in your laptop. However, when was this? Yeah, in less than a year later, people figure out that they start to become more and more innovative with their workstation. Here, initially the laptop, and they soon realized that graphic cards, like used for gaming, or GPU, graphic processing unit, were way more suited for this kind of work than the normal laptops, but way much more electricity intensive too. So in mid 2011, the first commercial Bitcoin mining product included chips that were reprogrammed for mining Bitcoin. This was when they were first launched in the market. What do I mean by chips reprogrammed for mining Bitcoin? They would take some chip that for other use case and reprogram them only to do Bitcoin. Those chips were faster, but still power hungry. ASIC, or application-specific integrated circuits, are designed specifically for Bitcoin mining. ASIC technology has made Bitcoin mining even faster while using less power. This bring us back also to the question you just asked. You can see that in this industry that first started with people in their own laptop, in their garage mining, is becoming a real industry, a big scale industry where people are innovation is here. People are building some machines that are only doing that, and that, as I just point out, that are less electricity intensive but more powerful. So yeah, this is what an ASIC look like. The nanometer here has like every 2 years in average, they're able to make those chips even smaller, like 2 times smaller which makes them like way much more efficient. So that's what proof of work is. The mining software used to mine Bitcoin is called proof of work. It makes sure that processing power is used to solve the algorithm, which require hardware powered by energy that translate in time. It simply makes sure that those engines compete with each other to solve the computer problems, and ensure that the information, aka the new block mine, the new block of transaction, was difficult to be made. When I was mentioning those new way to verify transaction, for example, that are less electricity intensive, this is exactly what I was talking about. Proof of stake is a more recent mining software algorithm. The purpose is the same as proof of work, but the process is quite different. Unlike proof of work, where the algorithm rewards miners to solve a mathematical problem that creates a new block, the creator of the new block here is chosen from a pool of users that have staked a certain amount of cryptocurrency. This means that in the proof of stake system, there is no puzzle or mathematical problem to solve, and so no rewards in doing so. Instead, the miner takes a fee from every transaction. This also means that because nobody is competing to solve every problem, every math problem, there is no massive energy requirement. The penalty for trying to harm the network is a possibility of losing the money the miner have staked, which could easily be upward of $10,000. In order to take over a proof of stake network, one would need to own 51%, at least 51% of the supply of the cryptocurrency on that chain, on that blockchain. This will be a prohibitively expensive undertaking for any major network. And it's less likely to happen than owning 51% of the computing power, something that can already be achieved by mining pools. This is maybe too technical. I won't talk too much about the mining pools. However, in simple, this is why I put the last sentence here. If you own 1% of all the Bitcoin out there and you stake them, you will be able to mine and receive transaction fee from 1% of all transactions happening in this Bitcoin network. There is no more electricity intensity because here you choose who's going to submit the block, verify the transaction relatively to the amount of holdings they're staking, not to the amount of computing power they dedicated to this to solve the problem. And this is what was electricity intensive, the amount of computer power you had to allocate to solve the problem. Any questions, Stephanie, about this? Was it clear enough?
Yeah, so thank you. I am really curious. You're sharing a lot of the technology and it's a wealth of information. What I'm really curious about, and I know that you're talking about this after, and you'll move into the smart contracts and how this really applies to social justice and like financial equity. I know that you've had experiences, your work in Africa, in Senegal, and I really would love to hear how this, like taking this technology, what is the application that is advancing social justice, equity, environmental justice? I know you're going to get into the use cases, but just if you can kind of connect this now, it would be really helpful to give it some context.
Okay, I will try to answer this in a really broad manner. Mainly, I will take my own example. In developing country like Senegal, for example, you have a market where few companies in different industry have a lot of power, meaning there's very few banks. We're going to talk about financial inclusion in Senegal. There's very few banks, for example, in those developing countries. And because there is no competition in those markets, it's like an oligopoly. Because there is no competition, those companies and institutions are literally abusing of the population in terms of transaction fee, for example, in terms of service offer, in terms of pricing of the service. You would have way much more expensive service than in the US, for example, but way less efficient back there. Why? Because there is no competition. Those big companies can do whatever they want in those markets. They know that nobody's going to come after them, and neither no competition is coming anytime soon. Blockchain is this competition, literally, is the main point of it is to tackle all those third party that are needed in many, that in literally all, pretty much all industry today, and to rely on more peer-to-peer. You know, we're moving towards this sharing economy, this peer-to-peer trust instead of institutional trust, and this is the real value here. Taking out those abusing service provider and bringing healthy competition in those markets to give the best value to consumers. And this is how I believe, like, this is kind of the beginning of the supply chain, but you will see that this is how over time you will be improving environmental, social justice, equity justice, etc. Okay, should I continue? Regarding now coins, tokens, and security. This will be really fast. It's quite important to understand the difference between those terms. I'm pretty sure that the audience being a lot of lawyers here, you might have heard about those term of utility and security token. Let me first start with a coin cryptocurrency. Those are the technical term for them. They're protocols, meaning each of those coins have their own blockchain. Those are like the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, etc., etc. A utility or security token are built on top of those protocols, meaning on top of those blockchains, and are ruled by smart contracts. We're gonna right after look at smart contracts and their value and mechanism. A security token is simply a a utility token first is mainly used to power a particular platform and can be used to access voice service. You can think about it as the coins that you would need to use a washing machine in a laundromat. Without this utility token, you wouldn't be able to use the washing machine in a laundromat. A security token, on the other hand, is simply a digital security and can take the form of a tokenized equity share, debt, or other investment contract. It indeed fulfills all the HOETES requirements. It is therefore security. Just in case you are wondering, there is currently more than 2,000 of those coins and cryptocurrency and token. The top 10, however, is mainly composed of cryptocurrencies that all own their own blockchain. And for the question about privacy transaction, the number 10 one is a fully anonymous cryptocurrency, meaning I can send money to whoever I want, and nobody will be able to know where the money was sent from, who the money was sent to, and what is the amount of money that was sent. So this is just a small overview of the market, of the cryptocurrency market. So we made it finally to Ethereum and smart contracts. This is the last paragraph, the last chapter before looking at the use cases. A few years after the creation of Bitcoin, Vitalik Buterin, a young Canadian from Russian origin, at the time co-founder and leading writer at Bitcoin magazine, realized the following. The Bitcoin's blockchains store transactions, which we saw it together, in reality are informations under the form of data. So if those transactions are simply data, and everything in this world right now can be transformed in data, you could store any kind of information, data, on a blockchain. And you could do something more than only storing those ledger, those data in those computer. You could also use those workstations, those minor workstation, to dedicate their computing power to the blockchain in order to run program on it. By program, I mean moving value, representing ownership, exchange tokenized assets, and many more. Think about it as a decentralized Airbnb or Uber, but without the company behind as a third party taking a fee in every transaction, sharing the fee on every ride with the rider or the homeowner. So I will start with Ethereum. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency invented by Vitalik Buterin, and it's an open source platform. I believe it's currently the second or third biggest cryptocurrency in the market. This platform enables developers to build and deploy decentralized applications, aka smart contracts. Those are applications, but instead of running through the server of Uber or like Google using those data centers, they're using this decentralized network of computers. Therefore, it allows participants to run those smart contracts, to use those applications. But you would tell me, what is a smart contract? Sorry, it's simply a self-operating computer program running on the blockchain and acting like agreements. The terms of the agreements are pre-programmed with the ability to self-execute, enforce, and terminate itself depending on certain conditions being met or not. Its main purpose is to facilitate the exchange of money, share, content, property, or anything of value without need of a middleman. So I thought that looking at the audience, it would be interesting to compare traditional versus smart contracts. Nobody's taking your job, guys, don't worry. While conventional contracts are created by legal professionals, smart contracts are built by computer programmers, by coders. The contracts here are not physical, they're not on paper, they're digital, a piece of code on your laptop. And the language is not the fancy lawyer language, and it's more a coding language. Can be C++, Python. In the case of Ethereum, it's a coding language called Solidity. And more importantly, I'm not really going to talk about the amount of page, blah, blah, blah. More importantly is that usual conventional contracts usually rely on third party to enforce the contract, meaning governments, laws, while smart contracts, this code can be automatically executed by a distributed ledger system, as we just saw it. So how do they work? The same way a normal contract will work. You first agree on predefined term of the contract, or the third party meet and agree on those terms, and those terms are coded instead of written in a normal contract, a conventional contract. They're coded into a smart contract. When the condition that will trigger the contract happen, in this case, it was a home insurance and a fire happened, the events, which is a fire, directly trigger the insurance policy execution. The smart contract is automatically executed based on the pre-agreed terms, and the payment will be settled directly after the event happening. It's faster, it's autonomous, and it's more efficient. So, why smart?
Yes. Question for you. So just also, like, in the interest of time, I'm really curious, and I think a lot of our listeners are probably really curious to hear more also how this, in context, how do so we've covered cryptocurrencies, and I know that you have a really good portion here on social justice and use cases. So I'm curious if you could explain this in context with the use cases, like, simultaneously, because it's a lot easier to hear it. So, like, you're sharing about insurance and smart contracts. I know that one of the questions I have was also about, I'm just going to bring it in here. So maybe you can use this question as you're talking about this to put it in context. For example, somebody who doesn't know much about blockchain or smart contracts, but I think about the idea of a carbon tax, for example, or, as a way to incentivize a cleaner carbon footprint, or carbon credits. Those are two different schemes, two different things completely. But I'd love to hear you share this technology in context so that we can kind of think about,
I totally understand the feeling here. I would like to assure you that we only have one slide left before other use cases, so we're done with the technical part for today. And I will just finish this next slide, and we'll deep dive into the use cases. I think this will answer your concerns.
Right on.
Okay. So why the smart contracts are called smart? They're autonomous. You're the only one making the agreements. There's no need to rely on a broker, and they're autonomous in the way that they self-execute themselves. They're trustless. Your documents are encrypted on a shared ledger and is backed up on the blockchain, meaning that everybody is duplicated in many times over in all those nodes. It's also really accurate. They're not only faster and cheaper, but also avoid the errors that come from manually filling out heaps of forms. And finally, they will allow you to save money, as they knock out the presence of an intermediary. So I would like to congratulate you all. If you're still here, you now know more about blockchains than 95% of the world population. Yes, indeed. We all should be familiar with the value and mechanism behind blockchain, smart contract, and cryptocurrency. Therefore, we should be ready to look at their application in our domain of interest, environmental and social justice. So, starting with disaster relief situation case. In January 2010, a massive magnitude 7 earthquake hit Haiti and its capital, Port-au-Prince. Within 24 hours, over 20 nations and non-governmental organizations were on the move to provide disaster relief that ranged from recovery operations and medical support to distribution of food and water. Combining their effort to work more efficiently, the relief parties each brought specific resources and know-how. Subsequently, however, the United Nations revealed that collaboration and efficiency were handicapped by the absence of common communication channel and use of too many unstructured data sources, such as email and social media. I would like to introduce really a great use case here. This video was developed by SAP, and I think that just playing it will be simpler than me trying to explain it. So I will ask you for a minute of attention to that video.
The United Nations launched an international disaster relief mission just after an island has been struck by an earthquake. The United States, France, and the Red Cross set up camps all over the island. Each of them brings specific resources and know-how. The Red Cross helps with drinking water. France brings medical support, and the United States provides helicopters. The blockchain acts as a single source of truth and provides transparency over asset needs. Let's assume the French camp has several doctors that need to fly to the other side of the island. They enter a request in the app, which is then broadcasted to all mission participants via blockchain. All other participants can instantly see the request and react with a specific offer. Here, the United States can provide 3 helicopters to be on site in 30 minutes. All parties have agreed on a smart contract, a simple, open algorithm embedded in the blockchain, ensuring that everyone sticks to commonly agreed upon rules. Once an offer matches the request, it's automatically accepted. Help can be provided without delay, and no other party needs to act on it.
Was it clear enough? I'm talking about the sound.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So that is a way of an application of smart contracts. Blockchain technology here allows central system of relief mission participant to connect, like it's really this interoperability with throughout different partner. This will allow, this allowed, sorry, distributed power, as all parties are equally entitled and can continue to use their own resources planning system. It allows partner interoperability because the blockchain provides a single source of truth for all operations, which is updated in real time. Every party can access the transaction history. It allows ad hoc capabilities because the party can join and leave the network at any time. And it keeps the data sovereignty, and because they don't have to expose their resources capacity to other participants. So it's literally connecting all those private database, the American government private database, the Red Cross one, the France one. And if someone needs, like someone needs someone, they connect the offer and the demand. Another way to do it, like more conventionally, would have rely, because they don't want to share those private information, their own resources, would have to rely on a third party that will know who owns what, and that will match those requests. Here, they don't need to rely on this third party, as they can use the blockchain to operate between each other and provide more efficient, faster answers to such situation. Looking now, staying in the disaster relief subject, and looking now at Puerto Rico last year. As you all may know, a Category 5 hurricane hit Puerto Rico, and the confusion, lack of organization, and lack of coordination between government agencies and contractors can create a very chaotic environment. For example, a sudden spike. So this disaster, this hurricane happened, and a sudden spike in demand for items, such as ready-to-eat meals, coats, generators, and bottled water, can force contractors to resort to suppliers thousands of miles away. Transportation companies must contend with impassable roads and dangerous delivery destination. Multiple layers of contractor can add to the complexity and confusion of relief efforts. So last year, under pressure to get relief to disaster area quickly in Puerto Rico, suppliers often go outside of their normal carrier network. Brokers don't have time to for full compliance check, and tracking, billing, and capacity planning is sometimes done by hand or in Excel spreadsheet. Such type of urgency and situation led FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to award last year a 30 million meals contract to an Atlanta entrepreneur with no experience in large-scale disaster relief. So when 18.5 of those meals were due, the contractor only delivered 50,000 of them, and they were not even packaged correctly. Second, in such messy environments, it's not only the mismanagement of funds that's problematic, but also the potential for fraud and waste are great, and waste, is great. This was once again proved a few months earlier this year, when people discovered more than 10 containers full of supply that were rotting for almost a year in a parking lot in Puerto Rico. So those containers, more than 10, I think there were 11 containers, were sitting there for a year. Like this was in August or September 2018 that they discovered that those containers were there, like, rotting like that. So, blockchain application. A blockchain system could match disaster location with appropriate vendors for relief supply. When a disaster strikes, smart contracts will automatically trigger orders. Electronic login devices could trace each load of freight from warehouse to truck to final destination. Not only this will allow a faster, more efficient response, but sorry. Not only it will increase the speed of monetary relief being administered, but also by allowing the funds to be tracked in a transparent supply chain, and therefore holding official, all the funds will be tracked on the blockchain, but in addition of full transparency and traceability of the funds, you will be also able to track the supplies themselves. So now that you know where is the money moving and how is the supply doing, the contractor doing, what each step of their process, you can really hold officials accountable for the administration of the funds and the contractor accountable for the management of the fund and the service itself. And this is happening already. The American Council for Technology released a report last year, I believe, that identified disaster recovery as a strong use case for blockchain. The agency administrator wrote in the 2017 hurricane season FEMA after action report, so FEMA's report. No, this was this year in July 2018, my apology, that the agency must simplify the processes and use technology to reduce complexity and increase efficiency. So those organizations are actively looking at such solutions to implement them in the future. So the Dakota Access Pipeline. We're now talking about environmental justice. I believe you're all familiar with that case, really really popular here. So it all started in 2014 when Energy Transfer Partners proposed this pipeline going from North Dakota to Illinois, moving around 450,000 barrels a day. This is a $3.8 billion project that goes for more than 1,000 miles. There have been scattered complaints about the proposed route ever since late 2014, starting with farmers in Iowa. But by far, the biggest source of opposition has been in North Dakota, around the portion of the pipeline that would run just north of the Sioux County and the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, home to 8,250 people. This is right here. Yeah, for the site, sorry. So first, the pipeline would cross under, so the two main concerns here was that the pipeline would cross right under the Missouri River at Lake Oahe, half a mile north of the reservation. A leak of oil could send directly, this is all the drinking water of those tribes. So yeah, all leaking there would be contaminating their only source of drinking water. And the funny thing here, not that funny actually, is that the tribes points out that the Dakota Access pipeline was originally considered a route further north, upstream of Birthmark, but right here. But the company rejected this road in part because of the close proximity to the state capital's drinking water as well. So they're okay, not contaminating drinking water as well, but we can contaminate a lake, a drinking water lake. So in those kind of situations, the second issue, sorry, before that, was that it's endangering indigenous sacred sites and burial places really close from there. So in such situation, NEPA, the National Environment Protection Agency, requires the US ACE, American Corps of Engineers, to do an environmental impact statement. And this is what we're going to focus on. Just to continue with the history of the fact, in July 2016, the American Corps of Engineers approved the DAP route. Few weeks later, 2 weeks later, the tribes sued the USA for two main issues. Inadequate consultation. The tribes were saying that they haven't been correctly consulted, and that to survey the land, the USA used out-of-state experts that missed very obvious archaeological places that was showing the tribe burial places and sites. So this suit led to the Army of Corps to stop the construction of the Dakota in January 2017, and instead to intend to issue a new EIS, environmental impact statement. A lot of people were happy until our dear friend came few weeks ago, I believe 3 weeks after that, after the U.S. Army stopped the construction. The new elected president signed an executive memorandum instructing the army to expedite, not only the review but the approval process for the unbuilt section of the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we saw how this environmental impacts study, because of the way it has been done, led to a huge administrative and legal mess where different administration had to be involved, and a lot of course right now they're redoing the whole environmental impact statement. The proposition here will be to use blockchain. Indeed, a blockchain-based system for the environmental impact statement investigation. In this system, in this blockchain-based system, all stakeholders would be registered. All processes will be reported. When I mean registered in the blockchain, reported in the blockchain. All documentation, videotape, audio tape of those consultations, of those meetings, will be also stored in the blockchain. Access through smart contracts will be rightfully delegated and monitored. Not only you'll be able to see who's accessing the data, but you will also be able to see what they're doing with it. And finally, this will have avoided a lot of problems that you just saw. If all stakeholders that were initially registered and defined should be required to confirm and report their involvement before the EIS publication. Just having a check, I've been consulted, for example, would have, in this case, the tribes wouldn't have checked this one and would have delayed the publication of the environmental impact statement instead of pushing it and having to redo it now. So this system indeed will offer a fairer and more transparent investigation process, will enhance communication and consensus between the different stakeholders, will save, we can see it, a lot of time, process, and money. But more importantly, this is an immutable, public, accessible, and corruption-proof, which is immutable, sorry, record of processes and results. You know that those EIS reports are for public record. Everybody should be able to access it. So this is really a database where it will never be modified, never be deleted, or everybody will always be able to access it. So that was for the Dakota Access Pipeline. Any comment or question, Stephanie?
I do have a question. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. So obviously this would be incumbent upon the government. You would need participation from legislative bodies and the government to endorse this, to say this is how we're going to track public documents. So just using, this would be a good time to ask the question about what are some of the problems and challenges, like the real world application to this actually being the way we do things.
That's a great question, actually. I would say the biggest challenges for this use case, but more generally for blockchain adoption, would be before answering the question, I would like to mention a report that I read about. It was published by Harvard Business School, and it was about blockchain. They called blockchain a foundational technology, not a disruptive technology. A disruptive technology is faster, more efficient, cheaper than the current state of technology, and more importantly, easily implementable. So a disruptive technology, you can implement it really easily, and it will do the same service faster, cheaper, more efficiently. A foundational technology will do things faster, cheaper, and more efficiently. The only difference is it's not that easily implementable. The way to fully, to fully benefit and leverage such technology, such foundational technology, is to take the current foundation of an industry, remove them totally, and on the green land, nothing on it, build those new infrastructures, those new foundation to fully leverage, like it's literally building this environment to fully leverage this technology. So to answer your question, I would say infrastructure is the most important thing. Different kind of infrastructure. From a legal perspective, you need like state level and international policy networks. They need to adapt and allow for innovation while providing adequate legislation that provide a base level guidance on what can and cannot be accomplished with blockchain. But looking at developing countries, you also need the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure. Indeed, some of those countries have really poor internet connection or no access to like even not mobile phone, which are pretty popular right now. But yeah, you have those infrastructures that are maybe lacking there too. But the number one and most important needed infrastructure, I believe, is the educational one. People need to understand in this 21st century the value of data and how blockchain can help you secure and really own those data. You know, it's all about data ownership. And yeah, those are the main challenges I see. You will see, so look, talking back to this foundational technology, you would see a lot of barrier, like by the big current institutions, the current foundations, they don't want to get moved away. So this will be another challenge too, that I believe is maybe already happening, but we'll see more and more happening in the future. You will have those decentralized network competing with the centralized network. The promise here is either decentralized network, like it's not it's all used, like gives the power to the people, but also the responsibility to the people. While the centralized network will be selling it as we're making it more convenient for you, but you own your data. We're seeing a shift from this centralized to decentralized economy. However, I will keep going with the two last example and use cases we have. Was this clear enough? Stephanie?
I'm on mute. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
No. Thank you very much. So, blockchain and still environmental justice. We're talking here about behavioral incentivization through purpose-driven token. What am I talking about? So, with the current recycling programs, people often don't have good incentives to participate. The responsibility for running recycling programs often falls on each separate city, which results in many places not having recycling programs at all. It's also difficult to track and compare the impact of this program. Bitcoin and the token governance rule specified in the Bitcoin blockchain protocol have introduced a new form of value creation, where a network of actors meet with each other, agree on a specific goal. In the case of Bitcoin, the goal was to build this fault-tolerant peer-to-peer money remittance without the banks. And value is created when someone proves that they have contributed to the previously defined collective goal. In the case of Bitcoin, it will be proof of work and the subsequent block reward, also called Bitcoin mining. So this is how you can really incentivize collective value creation. People do good stuff for the environment, they would get rewarded by those tokens. Cryptographic token issued by a smart contract on a blockchain can now be used to incentivize those individuals and corporations to act in a sustainable manner. Such incentive can be a key to reaching a sustainable future, and tokens can be used as a representation of the reward collected. So the reward can be fungible, meaning you can trade it for the cryptocurrency, or not fungible. It's more identity. Think about it as an identity-based reputation token. In some cases, fungibility can be limited, representing a value that can only be exchanged for product and service within the community, therefore never leaving this internal system and being exchanged for fiat money, but being useful in the internal community. In case you might think we're far from such reality, let me please introduce you to few projects that are already making it a reality. So you have those proof of CO2 emission reduction, which by riding bike, walking, taking public transportation instead of using your car, you will earn those solar coin, electric coin, or sun exchange coin. Also, proof of energy consumption reduction. It's literally a blockchain-based reward system incentivizing users with a token every time they prove that they have used less energy by using energy-efficient devices, turning the light off, etc., etc. Users basically earn money for reducing their carbon footprints. This can be also applied to companies. This should be applied to companies, actually. And this comes also to the carbon emission question you were asking earlier, Stephanie. A last example, proof of tree planted, recycling, etc. It's simply a proof of undertaking actions to help natural resources like, for example, planting trees, cleaning a beach, reduction of food waste, recycling of goods, sorry. So you get the concept here. You can really incentivize people and institutions and companies through this kind of purpose-driven tokens.
So can I just want to jump in here. To proof of energy consumption reduction. I think this would be a good point to really look at the idea of carbon tax and carbon credits. I mean, that's a whole webinar in itself, but the idea of incentivizing, not just incentivizing companies, but it's incentivizing consumers, right? If there's a carbon tax applied to a product that has a high carbon footprint, and that tax it's the consumer who's paying the tax, and the industry and the company paying the tax. It would be the incentive for the company, because consumers would buy another product that is from a company that has a lower carbon footprint, and would also be incentive for the company to clean up their supply chain, right? And they'd have to document this. So I have a question coming here, but my assumption is that documenting through their supply chain and due diligence efforts, and how they're reducing pollution and how they're cleaning up their act, they would get a score of some sort that would, I don't know the technology, the technical language, but they would get a score that would have the company or product fall into a carbon tax category. And so I'm curious, like based on all that, what would that look like? And that's totally separate from carbon credits, but just from this carbon tax idea, how would that look using the blockchain? Or
sure.
Even Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, but just the blockchain in general.
Sure. So first, you would have to create this smart contract that would reward. So looking at the exact use case that you gave about companies' supply chain carbon footprints, by informing and uploading their supply chain processes on the blockchain, you would be able to actually quantify how, like, the amount of carbon footprint this product, the product that this company is using, and therefore the product. By quantifying it, you can now create this smart contract, these tokens, that would reward every company's, relatively to their carbon footprint quantity, for example. So as you said, a non-fungible reward system would be that, as you said, like 5-star would be for companies that have less than, I'm giving an arbitrary number, like 1,000 units of carbon footprints. While if a company has like between 1,000 and 2,000, they will only have 4 stars. So it's literally by quantifying the information on the blockchain, because now those companies cannot lie anymore about their processes, about, like I'm saying, to put everything on the blockchain. From, for example, if you're a fishing company, from the contract of the fisherman that is in the vessel to like all the different third party that you're using throughout the distribution. So you can know like that if, where the product is coming from, if it was clean, by clean, like didn't profit to like child labor or slavery, this kind of things. but also you can follow how much carbon emission it has been emitting throughout the whole supply chain.
So
And
why
by
is it one question is, why is it different on the blockchain than it is on the, I mean, you have third-party due diligence companies that are documenting this in their own databases. There are verification processes, right? So how does it differ? What's the benefit of it being on the blockchain? And how does it technically, like, how do you prevent, I think you might have a use case here of slavery, or I was looking at something around slavery on fishing vessels. Like, how does that technically happen that it's transparent on the blockchain?
So you're right. This can be done through third parties. A third party can come and assess or like ask the company all their different contract, like from their fisher in the vessel, like asking all those information that should be uploaded in the blockchain. However, there is still the difference, as you point out, is that this third party will kind of gather power here to, if they agree with the companies, they can corrupt the documentation. As long as there's human involvement, you will always have this kind of risk of abusing of the power that is granted here.
Okay, great.
Point of view the blockchain is literally to imagine tomorrow, like the US government require all distribution company to put their all type of company to put their supply chain, exactly what you just said, to put their supply chain on the blockchain, quantify their emission, and give them a grade regarding their carbon footprint. That's exactly what you were saying, where like a consumer that is in today's world more and more educated and interested about where is my food coming from, is it eating child labor or slavery, etc. This will incentivize those companies not only to reduce their carbon footprint, but there will be a real competition, because they would know that, as you just said, like I would go, even if I have to pay a bit more expensive, I would go with the product that's really showing me that no child has been abused or anything like that. That the clean product, and that's where we hope to go. Just to present the last use case. I see we're like 5-10 minutes late. Let's go quickly over the last use case. So this one is particular to myself. I'm going to talk to you about social justice, and more precisely about financial inclusion. As of today, there is more than 2 billion people around the world that have no access to any banking services. They have to rely on alternative financial services. I'm here talking about pay loan, pawnbrokers, or loan sharks. But to tell you how bad it is, in Senegal, where I come from, for example, people, like, there's less than 5% of the population that use conventional credit, that use credit literally. Why? Because they're still at the issue of how do we transact. Remittance is still a problem there. I'm not even talking about credit and financial service. I'm just telling you the most basic financial service, which is transaction settlement, is a real issue back there. So let me first give you more information about Senegal. Senegal is a country in West Africa with 15 million inhabitants. There is, as of now, around 17% financial inclusion. Out of this number, there's less than 10 to 12% that are finally included through banks. The rest is mainly microfinancing and mobile money wallets. Mobile money wallets because this country, has access to mobile phone. There is actually more phones than people. However, I've been out of this country for more than 5 years now, and while studying, I used to receive remittance from my parents. I will tell you about the remittance state in this market. To do it by banks, banks will take you a fixed fee of around $100, no matter the amount of money you're sending. Not only this is overpriced, but the service that's following it is amazingly bad. I had this automatic wire that will be triggered every month by the bank. Yet every month I would wait 8, 10, 15 days sometime before receiving my money in my French account or my American bank account. They're even using the SWIFT system. They're not doing nothing differently. But the infrastructures there are so bad, there's so much no competition, no alternative, that they're like, we can't provide this expensive service, this bad quality, expensive service. If you don't go with the banks for that, you will have to go with Western Union or MoneyGram. I'm putting 2 to 8% here, the in terms of transaction fee. It actually can go way much more. Like, and it was going way much more like 2-3 years ago, up to 15-20% of the money you sent. And the trickier thing here, they know that in those markets, people are not sending huge amount of money. They would send like less than $500, $1,000. And the smaller the amount to send, the higher the fee in terms of percentage. Nothing needs to be created here to newly created to really unlock this market. We just need to bring the supply of cryptocurrencies there. Indeed, no matter who I'm sending the money to, in Senegal or outside Senegal, a Bitcoin transaction would cost me, as of now, around 50 cents, and will be settled in 10 minutes, no matter what happens. With Litecoin, another cryptocurrency, this will cost me less than 2 cents, and will be done in 4 minutes. Ethereum, that you mentioned earlier, will cost you 15 cents in 3 minutes. So I'm not even saying to create a new cryptocurrency or anything for Africa. By just taking those current technology that are used here, you would like totally disrupt such markets in those economies. Why are they not there? As I mentioned earlier, the lack of infrastructure and education. My banker, my banker in Senegal, which worked for the #1 French bank in France and in Senegal, she didn't know about Bitcoin, and this was last December. Yes. However, we're seeing good things going on there, and this is once again brought by blockchain. Something else that I wanted to point out, sorry, just before showing this, is even the local money transaction service provider are awful. Venmo, for example, while here you can send money, you can make transaction on Venmo for zero fee at all. The Venmo of Senegal, there are currently 5-6 different market players for mobile money wallets. They will charge you, there's the one who actually charge you 2 to 8% on every transaction. 8% for transaction below $10 and 2% for transaction above $200. That's once again allowed possible because there is no competition out there, and you have those huge third party that are doing whatever they want because they simply can. And you see, right now, 2 of the biggest telecommunication companies in the continent just joined forces and use this blockchain-based system, that was supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's really simple. They want to connect all digital financial service provider in the continent, first in sub-Saharan Africa. You can think about this technology as the same way in the disaster relief example. You were able to connect, you were able to bring interoperability between those different actors in the going in IT. You will here allow interoperability between the different financial service provider. Think about it as a central bank in the middle that have an account on all those financial providers. You want to send me, anyway, I think that this is more than clear for an example. And so yeah, once again, blockchain here is connecting all the different players in the African continent to connect, to financially connect all those countries and their inhabitants. So that was all. Thank you very much. As you can see, I will conclude with just the following. Blockchain can have, although what people think, a positive impact on the environment, can help reduce bureaucracy and fraud, make organizations more transparent and democratic. It also helps track the origin and movement of products and encourage people and institutions to adopt environmental practices. We're still at the infancy of this industry, but more and more application will be emerging in the next year and decade to come. Thank you to everyone. It was really a pleasure presenting to you today.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. Wow, that was a lot of information to digest, and it really does help to have the context. So thank you. If anyone has any questions, please post them in the questions box. And if you have a question afterwards, if something comes to you, a thought, or you would like to connect with Shafiq or anybody, or reach out to reply to the email that you received as you logged on for this, and we will make sure you get your answers to your questions. I actually just wanted to say thank you so much. And just in putting this together, I really was thinking about all the different uses of blockchain technology in advancing social and environmental justice, and just some that I have thought of or seen or researched. And I'm always like, I don't understand the technology. And I think it really is important to understand, maybe not all the details, but it is important to understand technology in order to sort of conceptualize new possibilities, new ideas. Some of the ways that I think, or I see where we're going and really solve some of our biggest challenges would be through using blockchain to secure land title, land ownership, land title, say for indigenous communities or native communities. And some other ways I was thinking about, like the carbon tax schemes or carbon credit schemes, which are questionable, very questionable. There's a lot of props for carbon credits and carbon neutrality by buying or mitigating your emissions by buying carbon credits. And there's a lot on the downside of that as well. So I'd be curious to see how blockchain technology can sort of even the playing field there, as well as new uses for it in supply chain transparency and supply chain due diligence. I also was learning about voter fraud and how blockchain could be used in eradicating voter fraud. And of course, like, once we have, even in municipalities or small, like lower down in the government, where a lot of corruption takes place. And that's where a lot of our EJ communities, environmental justice communities, are dealing with the disproportionate impact of environmental harm, say from industry. A lot of lobbying efforts are sort of involved in that situation. So I'm curious to know how blockchain technology could I mean, that's obviously just one area where it could impact voter. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear about that, Shafiq. Have you thought about how blockchain could be used to end voter fraud?
Border fraud. That's really interesting. Border fraud, you're referring kind of as the current situation in the south border, right?
No, voting, like, well, in this, I mean, that might be a big question, right? But voting in this country, it's questionable, right? We're dealing with a lot of gerrymandering and different things, right? So
you're totally right about voting. It's literally, you just need to look at the current infrastructure. They're really outdated. In some places, they're still doing it with like paper ballot. The machines, like, there's literally third party backing all those machines that are currently in the market to register your votes. Once again, like, it's simply to look at the nature of the human nature. Wherever there is this kind of third party who's gathering an important power here, they usually abuse of that power. How do you know that when you vote in your machine or like in your ballot, in your paper ballot, that the third party that are counting it are really counting what you put in this machine, like in your votes? I know this sounds really like, remember that you're in the United States. Okay, this might sound not really a problem here, although I will guarantee you it is a problem. Looking at developing countries, this is a huge issue. Like, they're all out there, they're all doing it with pen and paper. So it's simply by bringing this new technology here, which allow you to like store those votes in an immutable, non-corruptible and permanent ledger. You will be able to do exactly what you do there, voting kind of anonymously, but by being 100% sure your vote will be counted. As soon as you will vote, you need to go in the blockchain, see that your public key, like this string of character that should represent you, has just voted, and you can even see the vote that you put. And now you know that this vote will always be on the blockchain. You can come here 2 months later, look back for your vote in the old blocks. You will see that your string of character, the vote is still the same. So that's really an added value here.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I'm noticing that we don't have questions, so I'm glad I got that question answered. It's really interesting to think of some of the other. I'm going to just share a few other thoughts I had on ways that blockchain could be used to advance environmental and social justice, and then I think we'll wrap. And again, please reach out if you guys have any questions after. So I saw, I don't remember where, so I can't cite it. And I know that you might have some resources, everyone, on the last slide, the last page in your PDF. Shafiq was really generous and gave a bunch of resources for like learning more. Yeah, there you go. So, so I'm not sure where I saw this, but using blockchain for environmental treaties to track the real impacts and compliance and avoid fraud and manipulation of data by companies and governments. I mean, that's a huge one, right? And then also a trading solution for solar power to directly invest in renewable energy systems and digital identities for refugees. This is a huge use. I mean, there's a lot of movement in that area. Blood diamonds, using it to track the exact supply chain, the exact footprint of diamonds. And now
sorry to interrupt, Stephanie, but the blood diamond industry, like I think since 2010, a bit later, they're really working into implementing those like blockchain technology to track literally the diamond from the mine to the jewelry store, and that's
and it really,
looking at Congo, for example, where like those mine of cobalt, like you see, like cobalt is what is in your iPhone, in those big companies that you really trust and everything. Those guys, I'm sorry to say it, they're abusing like child, they're like enslaving people in those Congolese mine, and nobody know about it. You have those Chinese companies that are buying it directly from those non-official mine, non-certified mine, and that are sending it to build the cobalt to China to build this phone that we're using every day. By buying an iPhone, we're promoting in some ways to abuse and slavery. I have an iPhone myself, so I'm not judging anybody. Sorry.
No, it's not just the iPhone. It's the clean energy in general. Where are we storing our clean energy in general? It's the batteries that need cobalt and lithium to store that clean energy. But that's a whole other webinar, my friends. So if that's something you'd be interested in hearing, we will definitely organize that, because that's an area I'm really interested in. But I do want to thank everybody. I think, Shafiq, do you have anything else to add? We do have to wrap up. You good?
I think I'm good. Yes, all good here.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Well, go ahead.
No, I was about to thank you myself. Thank you, like Stephanie and the ABA for making this happen. I believe, like looking at my experience there, the best blockchain application, the best blockchain use cases came from people that are already in those industries, that are like run by the third parties, that know all the insights of those industries, that are joining forces, that are getting interested into those new technology that can help make their life easier. So I cannot, how do we say it, advise you enough to go find a blockchain person and tell him about everything that's going on in your legal industry, and he will tell you how, like, by putting your both knowledge together, you're gonna see what blockchain can do here, cannot do here, and what's the real value in your industry. And I believe this is how like the big companies of tomorrow will emerge, and in everything, energy, healthcare, banking, all those.
Oh my goodness, I am just having to apologize. I just discovered I couldn't see this. It wasn't opening up, and I have to apologize. We have a bunch of questions. Oh my goodness. Okay, do you have 10 more minutes, Shafiq? And I think we could hang here. Maybe people will leave, but this will be recorded, and you will have a copy of this replay. Do you have a few minutes? We could just look at some of these questions.
Yes.
Please all right, and then maybe what we can do is like send out an email with an answer to these questions. I apologize. I just saw it wasn't opening for. Okay, so what is in the ledger? My money, my contract, a contract under negotiation. This is from Libby. I am not sure I understand the rest of that. What is in the ledger?
The thing is, so what's in the ledger? It's information, as we said, and in this world, information is not anymore like a piece of paper. It's more, all information is digitalized into data. So you can put literally like anything in those, like in the blockchain, and but also in those ledgers. Like the ledger itself is data, but in the ledgers there is how to say, the history, the record of all transactions that
Okay.
are under the form of data. Please
So
continue.
what about, like, are there any due diligence or like other reviews of interested verifiers conducted?
Really, really interesting question. So the same way when you're building a smart contract, sorry, a conventional contract, you need to be really, really, you need to give special attention to the legal words that you're using. You know, there's always loophole in contracts, so you need to really make sure you're closing all those loopholes. Same way with a smart contract. Instead of having those legal terms that can be turned against you and stuff like that, you're literally having those line of codes. And if you have a loophole in your smart contract, meaning in your code, someone can hack your code, your smart contract, and steal all like the money that is linked to it, or yeah, steal your data in it.
So is there any way that everyone can agree to have, like, to create a fraudulent transaction? Is there any way that like multiple parties can agree to create a fraudulent transaction?
So it's all about like this smart contract and the conditions that are pre-embedded to the contract. You know, if they're building a smart contract where they're making it on purpose to leave a small loophole, and in the future they will leverage this loophole to steal the money, yes. But there's an industry that's booming right now. It's called code auditing, smart contract auditing. Those are literally legal consultant, but coding consultant that will review your codes and really make sure that there is no loophole here, nobody can hack it, there is no like backdoor and stuff like that.
Okay, interesting. All right, just in the interest of time, I think what we're going to do is actually send an email with answers to these questions, and let's just pick one or two more, okay? So the internet, there's a few different, sorry folks, the way these are asked in a few different boxes. Okay, I've been posting questions, I hope you've received them. I'm so sorry I didn't get them until just now. Purpose-driven token software would have to avoid greenwashing. Would data entry carbon emissions be automated, or would individuals have to make manual entries?
So I'm trying to find the question. So purpose-driven token.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, folks.
Data entry, carbon emission. Oh, really interesting. So I will just repeat the question. For example, in the example of carbon footprints, those incentivizing token, behavior incentivizing token. Looking, for example, at carbon emission from companies, would the data, I was saying that we need to quantify the supply chain of the company's supply chain. Yeah. Will the information that are uploaded on the blockchain are manually entered by humans? So I'm saying, yeah, this is a contract, or are they automated or automatically entered in the blockchain? Actually, there is both, but we're moving. So there is some cases where you have the people that are reporting on the blockchain, but this, as you may, I totally agree with you, this is a point of failure. There's always a case of corruption here. What we're seeing is the Internet of Things industry that is really a symbiosis with the blockchain industry. With this Internet of Things, you can, like, for example, when it come out of the vessel and go in those huge truck that are like really cold, that are supposed to keep the fish cold. You can have those sensors in the truck that will show how cold it is actually in the truck, and if it's not cold enough, for example, like the fish will be bad and stuff like that. But you have all those Internet of Things devices, those sensors and new technology that leverage Internet of Things that will gather this data. Another one really interesting is it's about radio frequency code bars, something really similar to that. So you see the way when you go to a supermarket, to Walmart, for example, they will take in the product that you're buying, there is a code bar that will scan it with the machine they scan with. So when you go to those Amazon stores, those new Amazon stores, there is not such things anymore. They're using those radio frequency like code bar. How does it work? Every product in the Amazon store has a code bar, but instead of being this physical, like this visual code bar, it's a radio frequency code bar. It's emitting radio frequency. But when you leave the Amazon store, you have those two doors on the side that when you cross them, they directly send you the bill in your Amazon application. Those are actually the receptors of those radio frequency code bars. So when you're passing those two doors, those two things, like I don't know how to call them, I'm sorry. Instead of having someone to have to check all your things by radio frequency, all your baskets of goods will be scanned automatically with this. Exactly the same things they're doing with, for example, the phishing example, where like they will put a radio frequency code on the fish, and there will be some receptor and every step of the supply chain to make sure that for example, if the fish has been fished yesterday morning, it's not getting in the truck like tomorrow afternoon. You know, it's getting in the truck yesterday at noon, for example. So yeah, great question. And we're entering this digital world with the Internet of Things. Everything's connected, from your clothes, your watch, to everything literally. It will be more and more automated, and will less and less rely on individuals manually entering information to the blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that answer. All right, folks, it's about 5 minutes, the hour, so I think we have to wrap up. And I really want to thank you for your time, Shafiq, and your knowledge, and thank you all for your presence and engagement. And I'm so terribly sorry that I've just missed these questions. And so I do see that some people found the resource page was helpful. So again, thank you so much. And we really do invite you to come visit the AmericanBar.org/CRSJ website and see what other programming we have going on, and get involved if you're interested in one of the many committees in our section. There are a lot of opportunities, especially in the Environmental Justice Committee, plug. We have our meetings on the third Thursday of every month, our monthly calls, so you are invited. If you'd like any information, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for your presence, and thank you, Shafiq, for this amazing presentation.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie, and to the ABA. We're on the right way, I believe, and with more initiative like this one, we can only be on the right way. Thanks also to all the attendees. It's a pleasure to present to you today, and hopefully we'll be able to do similar things in the future.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good night.
You too. Good night. Okay.